Before I get one more asinine fucking comment telling me that I shouldn't have given Erased a 2 out of 10, I'd like to make some declarations and clarifications about how I think scores should work. First of all, the obvious. A score only really matters to the person giving it. It's completely inconsequential to anybody else. A score is a ranking. I know you're thinking it's a rating, but it's also a ranking. Because when you give a score to something, you're saying that it's the same level of quality as everything else that is that score. If you give something a 6 out of 10, and you give something else a 6 out of 10, you're saying that they are around the same level of quality. This is the most important thing to understand about scores that no one seems to understand. When you give all of your favorite, every show you like, a 10 out of 10, and then you go back and look at them, and you realize that you've given shows that maybe aren't as good as one another the same score, that's when you have to start reassessing how you use scores. And I see this all the time. I see so many people who will give 10s to everything, and I eventually will ask them, so you're saying that's as good as that? And they'll say, no. And I say, well, then change your score. So, all of the scores I give are based on, I have this list, this huge list of every anime I've given a score to. It's on my anime list page. And they're all in order, from best to worst as I see them, given scores that put them in the same range as each other. And when I want to score a show, I go look at this list and I say, well, is this show better than that one? No. Is it better than that one? No. And then I keep going down until I find the spot where it belongs. Now, I keep getting comments telling me that Erased is like, it's just mediocre. It's like the minimum of what anime should aspire to and all this shit. Fuck that, alright? Look, Erased has pretty visuals. Erased has decent directing. That's all it has to me. I know some of you might think that it has decent writing or characters or something. I don't feel that way. I don't think anything in the writing is worthwhile in the show. I think you could throw it all out. I wouldn't give a fuck. I see no value in this show's existence. I wish it didn't exist. I actively wish this show was not around. Because I hate every time I see a show that just has a strong premise and flashy visuals get really, really popular when other stuff that's actually really fucking good isn't getting anywhere. Now look, I keep calling Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju the best show of the season. Doesn't mean I'd give it a 10 out of 10. It might be like a strong 8, maybe a light 9, right? And then people keep saying like, just because Erased isn't as good as that doesn't mean it's fucking a 2. Well, guess what? Erased also isn't as good as Konosuba, which is an 8 in my book. It's not as good. I didn't even watch anything else, but based on the first episodes of shows like even Bubuki Buranki, which I had a great time with the first 2 episodes, I don't think that show would be amazing. It's probably like a 5. It was still more fun than Erased. Erased is shit in my book, alright? Having good visuals doesn't make a good show. You can have an amazing show with shit visuals. Totally possible. What I judge shows on is their overall strength. Their overall, you know, what I ultimately felt about it. To me, if I feel nothing, that means the show is terrible. Just because, like, I don't get this idea. People have, like, this idea that a 5 out of 10 is what you get when your script is complete fucking garbage, but it kind of looks like you tried. That's not what a 5 out of 10 is. In my book, a 5 out of 10 is usually something that actually has a lot of heart. Usually it's something that maybe falls short in the script and the writing and stuff, but has, like, good things about it. I just gave a strong 5 to Rakudai Kishi no Cavalry, which I talked about on my channel, how that show is fairly generic and it's not like that interesting, but it has characters that are likable, that you care about. It has some interesting themes. It has some interesting animation moments and directing moments that actually have, it has moments of pop. It has moments where you kind of care about what's going on. I didn't have that with Erased. Erased is not as good as Chivalry of a Failed Knight. It is not as good to me. It is markedly worse because I didn't care about anything in Erased. Nothing fucking mattered. You know, having decent directing or decent animation did not help me to care, alright? Now, when I chose Erased's score, I based it specifically on Zankyo no Terror, which is a show that I consider a strong 3 to a light 4. Because Zankyo no Terror was better directed, it actually had really great directing. It was really well put together. All of the shot compositions were beautiful. The animation was unbelievably beautiful. There was lots of meaning packed into the way that things were presented in much the same way as Erased, but it had much better tone, way better pacing. You know, the first episode of Zankyou no Terror, like, completely drew me in. I wrote a 20-minute video about how great the directing was in that episode. I didn't feel that with the first episode of Erased. It was just kind of boring. It like... It had no sense of tone. It cuts between scenes like that. When I was editing the video that I made about Erased and I was rewatching like episode 1 for editing, I was shocked how fast it was going between things. It's like you get like 3 shots of the main character tearing up his manga, going to the editor, getting rejected. You get 1 shot of him in his bed, and then the next shot is him like doing the pizza delivery, and then he does the power thing, saves the kid, and it's like this fucking minute-long scene or whatever, and it just motors through all these plot points, and I know it's because they adapted like 5 chapters of the manga into the first episode. It was just trying to get all the setup out of the way and then, you know, move on. But the result is that it just feels like this fucking slapdash nightmare of fucking scenes happening one after another, and I don't give a fuck about any of it. It sucks. It sucks to watch. It was painful. I hated watching this show. I hated every episode of it, except for episode 2. That was the only one where the premise seemed kind of interesting, because it kind of had this idea that he was like battling with like his older self and his younger body were kind of like, you know, affecting one another. That doesn't really come up that much again. You know, it's just kind of like it's set up there as a thing that maybe is happening in the background, but it never gets mentioned again. You know, you learn about Kaio, and then like you get it immediately. As soon as you know what's going on with Kaio, her mother beats her. That's it. That's her whole character. That's her whole character to the whole fucking show. There's nothing else to it. I'm getting on a tangent here. I'm talking about Erased too much. My point is that I looked at that show and I said, well, I hated Zankyou no Terror because the script went to complete garbage. From like episode 3 onwards, it was just downhill. The ending sucked. The script was stupid. I didn't like the characters, but it was beautiful and it was well directed and it had an amazing soundtrack by Yoko Kanno. All of those things are worth points, but people will say things like, well, shouldn't it get at least a 5 for those things? No, it shouldn't, because at least a 5 would be like Chivalry of a Failed Knight, where I actually gave a fuck about something in the show, where it was actually entertaining to watch. So, and then other people, I had people, even when I gave Chivalry a strong 5 to a light 6, they were like, well, you seem to be praising it a lot for a show that you'd give that score to. And it's like, yeah, because a 6 is a positive fucking score. A 6 is above the median. It's above average. It's good. A 6 is good. If you want the 8 out of 10, you gotta be fucking Konosuba, which was hilarious all the time. Every episode was a fun time. I loved the whole show. And why doesn't Konosuba get a 10? Because a 10 would go to fucking K-On! Something where I had like big emotional impact on me, where I fucking like cared about these characters for years and have cried watching the show. That's a 10 out of 10, alright? Every score is a huge amount of difference to me. The difference between a 10 and a 9 is the difference between a show that, like, rocked me to my core and a show that, like, I really liked. You know, like, I gave Barakamon a 9. That was a show that, like, had moments that were touching and fun, and I cared about the characters and everything, but I don't think about it every day the way I think about, like, fucking Gurren Lagann, where for years that was, like, part of my ethos was to think in the way of the characters of that show, you know? That's a fucking 10, when it gets you thinking about it all the time. You know, an 8 is a show that I enjoyed thoroughly all the way through. A 7 is a show that I overall enjoyed. Maybe I thought it wasn't, like, amazing, but I just was like, yeah, I had a good time with it. And a 6 is like, I had some problems, but overall it was good, you know? If I hate every episode of a show, it's not a fucking 5. It's a 2. I actually, in a lot of ways, I kind of hate Erased more than Sword Art Online. The only reason I didn't give it a lower score is that Sword Art Online is, like, offensive at times. There's moments in Sword Art Online that make me physically mad, where I was like screaming at the screen. But at least that show has like a fun mimetic sense, and it's memorable. Like the character designs are very memorable, the world is very memorable, the ideas of the story, the themes, even though they're explored very poorly in the series, are kind of interesting. There is like merit to Sword Art Online, which is why I put it above the Asterisk score, because that show had no merit, and I don't think Erased had any merit either. At best, it was not incompetent, but the writing was fucking terrible. That's a 2 out of 10 to me. And the fact that so many people don't get that people are like, how could you give it such a low score? It's like average. I'm like, if this is average, we're fucking doomed. If this is what we are accepting as like the minimum level of what anime should be, then we're fucking doomed. The minimum level of what anime should be is good. At least somewhat good. At least entertaining, and like with characters that maybe you think about once ever again. I will never remember Satoru. That's the name of the main character, and the girl was Airi, and the other one was the fucking little girl. I don't know. I don't care. I think I said it earlier. Kaio. Jesus Christ. Who fucking cares? They did nothing. They're uninteresting. They're boring characters. They suck. The show sucks. The premise, the only good thing in the show is the idea that as a 29-year-old, you go back into your younger self to solve a mystery. That could be cool, you know? Detective Conan is a show about a genius detective adult who gets sent into the body of a kid and has to solve mysteries from a kid's perspective, and it did a million things with it. The show has like 10,000 million episodes, and they come up with ideas of like, what would being a child, you know, mean in the case of this? Like, and all these fucking people who say Erased isn't a mystery show, like that changes anything. Oh, it's a thriller? It's a shitty thriller. It's boring to watch. A thriller should have you on the edge of your seat. You want a thriller? Go watch fucking Genkutsuo. Anyway, that's my rant. Scores. Use them right. And quit bitching about other people's scores. It's not yours. So you really have no say in what my scores are.